and she had asked Juliana, "Can I call you mommy now?"
When you say she, who are we
I'm
talking
sorry,
about?
Valerie. Said,
Valerie, Christine's daughter?
Yes. Said, "Can I call you mommy now?" Juliana, again, I don't remember her answer. She said yes. And then she said, are you going to marry my daddy? And Juliana said, "I wish."
It is day 6 of the Banfield trial. Yes, day 6, day 790 million, day 6-7. I don't pick one. We have another day of trial that is going to, I think, test my level of optimism and what we are going to learn and what, if anything, will go smoothly for the defense today, because honestly, I'm not sure. Day 5 was one of the most painful days in court I think I've ever seen. And I've seen some tough days in court, and I've never seen anything quite like that. The defense is really struggling with a deep lack of organization. And it seems that defense is surprised that they're like in trial all of a sudden. But this isn't a case where I think there was ever a plea offer. It was always going to go to trial. So maybe today will be better. Maybe we will learn something new. Maybe we will see if the defense does things that helps set the groundwork for the defendant to testify. And maybe after Snowing Ed and the defendant will get back to court and be like, I changed my mind. Let's wrap this up. Who knows where we're going from here? But I can tell you one thing's for sure. We're going back to court.
We had a briefing within the first week of the incident where we were discussing everything that everybody had done and the information that was collected. And our supervisor at the time told us there were 2 theories in the case and we needed to get behind the right one.
Who was the supervisor?
Lieutenant Smug.
Okay. Who was in the room?
The homicide investigators, the detectives.
Okay. Were there any other people?
I don't recall if there were victim services or advocates or our crime analyst or others who might be there during a briefing when we have just had an incident.
How did they have that?
Was one of those
How did they have 2 theories a week into this case?
theories catfishing?
It wasn't stated what the theory was. It just said there were 2 theories and you need to get behind the right one.
Okay. At some point, in order
How
to
do you
get
know
behind
which
it, you have
one's
to
the right one if you don't hear that there's 2 theories? What were the 2 theories?
know what it was. When did you find out?
I'm not sure who said exactly that it was catfishing, that was what it was. That's just what I had begun to understand and hear from other people.
When was it that, in your mind, catfishing was confirmed or negated?
Is that really the question you want to ask of the homicide investigator?
It was toward the end, I would say, that once we understood the full for the investigation, catfishing is maybe how you got to a point, but what happened in the room, in the bedroom, that is really what you need to figure out. That's the determination of who would be charged in the crime of murder. So
she's being
once
mindful.
you understood all of that and what happened within the room, and then you have the other evidence of it coming forward and through the digital forensics and the interviews and all of this stuff. That decision was made on who to charge for it based on the forensics evidence.
Your investigation was focused on who killed Joseph Bryant and Christine Banfield, correct?
That's correct.
And you followed the evidence in your investigation, and that evidence led you to charging decisions, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Juliana Perez-Muglis was charged because you were able to prove that she shot Joe Ryan. The evidence supported that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And Mr. Banfield was charged when?
You charged Juliana with shooting Joe Ryan because that's where the evidence led you before Juliana even told you shit. And then you charged Brendan Banfield with both murders based on where the evidence led you before Juliana even gave an interview that proffered what happened in the room because that's where the evidence led you, right?
And Mr. Banfield was charged when? What was the turning point in your recollection of when Mr. Banfield
Here
was
it
charged?
goes.
When we got the blood evidence back.
Thank you. Nothing further.
All right, redirect.
Boom.
Detective Smith, were you ever feeling pressure to follow a
Redirect.
theory instead of evidence in this case?
I did not.
You spoke out about it, correct?
Yes.
And who was it that was applying the pressure to you?
She didn't say she felt pressure.
Whoever was in charge at the time, at the beginning, Lieutenant Smug, who made that comment in the first time,
After March 24th,
She didn't finish her
March
answer.
24, 2024.
It would come from Lieutenant Giascio and I think at the time it was a Captain Bursch.
The court is taking their morning break on day 6, and we have unlocked a new form of what if anything in where if anywhere. And the defense called homicide investigator Smith and seemed to be pursuing that the catfish theory was at some point set aside. It wasn't. That the supervisors were pressuring homicide to get on board with the right theory. And that statement definitely raises some eyebrows for me, that in a meeting a week into the investigating of this case, supervisors said there's 2 theories in this case. Get on board with the right one or get behind the right one. But when we got into redirect, the defense asked the detective, did you feel pressured in this case? No. I knew what I needed to do to investigate this case. Did you feel pressured by supervisors? No. Because she said in that meeting, she said, no, we shouldn't have any theories at this point, and stood by it. And she wasn't transferred. And then the defense tried to ask, so when was the catfishing theory put aside? And the prosecutor objected and said, objection, Your Honor, we're here on that theory. And then the prosecutor got up in cross-examination of the homicide detective and said, so you followed the evidence in this case. And with the evidence in this case, you charged Juliana with the murder of Joseph Ryan. And then you followed the evidence to charge Brendan Banfield with the murder of Christine Banfield and Joseph Ryan. What evidence led you to that decision? It was when the blood evidence came back. I have no further questions, Your Honor. And then the defense tried to say, but you felt pressured, right? And this witness was like, no, I don't think the jury's going to walk away thinking that Detective Smith was swayed by anyone or anything, because Detective Smith was giving come at me bro energy in her testimony, and I have no idea what in there helped the defense. Did the defense eliciting that the supervisors were like, get on board, sway your opinion of this case more, less, or did her answers at the end answer some questions for you? Why was he charged so much later? Because I think what I'm going to remember from this witness is, why was he charged so much later? Oh, because the blood evidence wasn't back yet. Once they had the blood evidence, they charged him. That's the thing I'm going to remember from this witness. And that her supervisors were trying to tie this thing up in a bow really early on, and they couldn't do it because they didn't charge him. The supervisors are like, get on board. They didn't charge him for a year after they charged Juliana. This crime happens in February of 2023. Juliana is charged in October 2023. He's not charged until September 2024. If the defense is going to try to go rush to judgment, where's the rush?
You decided that Detective Miller was not going to be, I think, as you said, involved in any other major crimes while you were there.
Any of the digital forensics for the major crimes cases, correct.
And then he was transferred.
Within weeks, I would say, yes, sir.
Okay. And
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
what was your basis for that?
So there
Oh,
were
dear.
a few factors. Would you like me to expand on this?
Were they related
Oh, I would love you to expand on this.
to this case?
Yes, sir.
Exclusively related to this case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Was it related to his work product?
Yes, sir.
And are you talking about the executive summary work product?
That was part of it.
Okay. And so
Oh, boy.
his conclusions were not agreeable to you?
I wouldn't word that way.
How would you word it?
I would word it that his analysis was incorrect.
Okay. And at that time, when you determined his
Okay.
analysis wasn't correct, had you had any training in digital forensics?
I have my master's in computer forensics.
Okay. So did you look at some of the items of evidence?
If you don't prepare the witnesses, then you don't then you don't know what answers are coming.
What would be the reason that you would differ from your expert's opinion?
Because of some of the unsubstantiated deductions that he made.
Okay, so it's based upon his decisions relating to his digital forensics expertise.
So the deductions and the wrongful analysis.
Okay, so the
Oh, it gets
decision-
worse.
I wouldn't use that word. I'd say deductions and wrongful analysis.
Okay, and the wrongful analysis
Wow.
relating to the actual digital forensics that were downloaded?
Some of them, yes.
Okay, and did you ever go over those with him in detail?
I would ask clarifying questions.
Did you tell him exactly what it was that you disagreed with in terms of his deductions and his analysis?
I think a couple of them, yes.
Okay, what in, how much, so.
How bad
many
was
were there
it?
in total?
Off the top of my head, I could probably list at least 4.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
And so it was based on that, based on your reading of his executive summary, that you decided that it had gotten to the point where he's no longer doing any more major crimes under your tutelage.
Digital forensics for major crimes cases. I retained him as a detective within the Major Crimes Bureau
understand
Child
that.
Exploitation Unit.
I understand that. The digital forensics section.
He was not going to do digital forensic analysis for any other major crimes case.
Okay.
You spoke about Brendan Miller and your concerns about his work. You specifically made the statement that he had unsubstantiated deductions. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Was one of those unsubstantiated deductions recorded in his executive summary that Christine Banfield was the operator of her devices when interacting with the FetLife account?
That's correct.
Okay. And was it that type of unsubstantiated deduction that caused you concern?
Exactly.
Your statement that it's unsubstantiated was in conflict with your digital forensics expert statement that she was in control of her devices on the FetLife communications, correct?
I don't know that I agree with part of that statement.
Okay, which part?
So there was a conclusion that Christine Banfield was always in the possession of her devices. The crime scene definitively
Relating
demonstrates
to
that to
FetLife,
be
which is what she
incorrect.
asked. The question was relating to FetLife. Do you,
So could you repeat the question?
so you want me to go all the way back to the difference between unsubstantiated and what?
No, the part where you're bridging of unsubstantiated with the FetLife.
Yeah, that was the question that you were asked by Ms. Sands. And so what I'm asking is, you've
Oh,
indicated that it was unsubstantiated. I'm assuming as to the question as to the FetLife communications, correct?
That's what Ms. Sands asked me, correct?
Yes. And so I think your answer was you were talking about generally the statement in his executive summary that she had not relinquished any of her devices. Is that what you were talking about?
Well, those are two different things. I answered Ms. Sands' question, which would be that, yes, his deduction that Christine Banfield was communicating with Joe Ryan was not only actually unsubstantiated, it was wrong.
Well, so what
shit.
did you look at to make?
That's the first time any witness in this case has said that Christine Banfield was definitively not the person communicating with Joseph Ryan.
And describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
Oh, shit.
what were your digital forensics qualifications in order to arrive at that conclusion?
Well, I reviewed sort of the evidence that was provided to me by the digital forensics people. For instance, the accounts were created in January. They had never, they were brand new accounts. That was unusual to me. We reviewed Christine's history. I think it went back to the mid 2000s. She had never so much as visited a porn site that we could find. So I thought that was.
I guess my question was about the digital.
What did you just say?
We reviewed Christine's history. I think it went back to the mid 2000s. She had never so much as visited a porn site that we could find. So I thought that was.
I guess my question was about the digital forensics.
Well, I think you reviewing her digital.
User footprint is part of the digital forensics.
footprint. There was no evidence of that. There were 2 occasions where the co-defendants were out of town for 48 to 36 hours, and none of the accounts, the CB 920 at Gmail wasn't used. The FetLife account wasn't used. The Telegram account wasn't used. It seemed unusual to me that that wouldn't happen while they were out of the house.
Whoop, there it is. So we are at the lunch break of day 6, and we have learned some interesting new information from the witness on the stand. It is defense witness 11, Giasio, I think is how he pronounced it properly. But as Giasio is on the stand, Giasio was asked about being on the Brady list. He gave the explanation that he had, at a supervisor's direction, which really makes me wonder if the witness before was in fact that direct supervisor, at a supervisor's direction, allowed a officer to stay home on light duty when the officer had a brain tumor. The defense did not follow up on that anymore. So I don't know if there was an investigation. I don't know if there was discipline. I don't know if anything happened, or it was just information that the prosecution turned over to the defense. We don't know anymore. The defense didn't follow up on it at this point beyond that. And then the defense was asking, in almost a little bit of a gotcha kind of way, hey, so based on your digital forensic experience, implying lack of experience, tell the ladies and the gentlemen of the jury what in the digital forensics made you believe that Miller's conclusions were wrong. And that's when the floodgates of this witness just kind of went whoop. And the witness is like, well, we had Christine Banfield's devices, and we went back in her device usage, internet history, etc., into the mid-2000s. And we saw that she had looked at no pornography of any type at all. And so that seemed odd, given the FetLife account. It was a red flag to this witness that the FetLife account was started brand new in January. And then beyond the internet usage of victim Christine Banfield was the very interesting forensic tidbit that there were 2 periods of time during the investigation where Brendan Banfield and Juliana were out of town together. We heard Juliana testify about these. One, Brandon had like a work trip and drove his work car and had a hotel for the work trip, and she drove up to meet him at his hotel that he had for the work trip. The other one was that trip to New York, and it sounded like they were visiting his family in New York, like it might have been a work trip combined with visiting family. And Juliana was up there, and Valerie, the daughter, was up there too. And do you know what they said in digital forensics? That during those 2 trips, when Brandon and Juliana were out of town, there was no activity on the FetLife account that had been created. There was no activity on the email address, and there was no activity on the Telegram account. He said there were 2 points in time where he would expect there to be activity on those accounts, and there wasn't. Interesting that that was something that stood out to this lieutenant. I'm interested to see what the rest of direct examination is. I'm interested to see what cross-examination is. But the defense also brought forward and is starting to bring out text messages and group text messages. It seems from those initial text messages that the prosecution and law enforcement weren't of the same mind on this case ahead of Juliana's preliminary hearing. And it seems that the law enforcement officers had backup plans in case the case against Juliana didn't make it past preliminary hearing. So it seems that they were concerned. And in a previous witness, they did bring up that part of the consideration in arresting Juliana was perhaps once there was a change of circumstance, once she was in custody, perhaps she would start focusing on her own self-interest and best interest instead of protecting other parties. If the jury thinks that law enforcement was coercing this out of Juliana, they are not going to like to hear that, yeah, we wanted to get her in custody so she would talk to us. to save her own butt, which is exactly what she did. But how would she know some of the things that she disclosed if they were just feeding this information to her? Leonard, a quick moment to thank today's sponsor, Incogni, and to talk a little bit about my cats, Fred and George. While we know the pets can be mischievous, it's not as mischievous as this Petco data breach from December 2025. The information that came out about this Petco breach was wild. They indicated that the data that was exposed was names, date of birth, social security numbers, driver's licenses, and bank account numbers, as well as credit and debit info. But what do you do after your data gets out there? Well, that's where Incogni comes in. Not only is Incogni available risk-free for 30 days, meaning you can just try it out for 30 days and then get a full refund if you're not happy with the service, but Incogni makes it incredibly easy to go get your information back off of the web where data brokers are selling it. Incogni lets me just set it and forget it. And I know that they will let me know if they find new data out there, and they will be going out and taking that data back off the internet, because what is clear is that these breaches are going to continue to happen and your information is going to get exposed. But what you can do about it is make sure that you aren't leaving it out there for data brokers to use nefariously. So now's the time to take back your personal data with Incogni. Go to incogni.com/Emily and use code Emily to get 60% off annual plans. That's right, 60% off annual plans at incogni.com/Emily with code Emily. All right, let's get back to it.
What were you told to do when you arrived?
My job was to be the homicide supervisor. Also, I was asked to review this case and other open cases.
And were you told to close this case?
Well, of course, that's the goal for any open case.
Specifically this case?
Yes.
Okay. Were you told to clean house in homicide?
If necessary.
Did you ever say, or
Interesting.
what, if anything, did you say about cleaning house of the existing homicide detectives?
I think I told all of them when I first got there that that was not my goal. I hope to keep everybody who was there.
Okay. And did people leave?
Yes.
Okay. And how many people left the homicide squad?
During my time there, 5 were promoted to sergeant. I think they're all back in the Major Crimes Bureau now. And
Did people leave? Yes, 5 were promoted. Is that 5 of the 8? Because counsel said 8 people are no longer in homicide. Oh, so they got promoted into the bureau that oversees homicide?
1 was transferred out.
1 transferred out.
Okay. And who was that one?
That was Detective Bryant. Or I'm sorry, 2. The Detective Bryant and Detective Hanging were transferred out.
Detective Bryant. He was transferred.
He was.
And that was, I guess, was it the decision around the time of October 25th? Which is,
I think he was transferred in January.
okay, but the decision, when was that made?
Shortly, probably in January. Was maybe late December.
Was the reason for his transfer the October 25th?
Objection leading.
What, if anything, did the October 25th recant and the time?
Based on everything we've seen in this case, Bryant was the one that was, as the other witness said, in over his head, who Smith was brought in to save.
Leading up to it, what, if anything, did that do to hasten his transfer?
I think once Juliana came in proffered and provided more context to the evidence, everybody agreed that the evidence was overwhelming and that they had missed the mark, and he was the lead. So that's what ultimately was what caused him to be transferred.
So he was transferred because he didn't get it done. You needed Juliana.
Objection leading.
Sustained deleting?
So
also
am I
argumentative.
to understand it was because of
Judge, that's still leading.
I don't know what the question is, but
Judge A is so patient.
Were there any other factors that were considered other than what you just testified to as to Detective Bryant's transfer?
When he became aware of the proffer, it was 5 days before he passed that information up the chain of command. So that also played in.
Okay.
What? Bryant became aware that the proffer was going to happen with the DAs and did not pass that up the chain of command for 5 days? Ooh, bitch. Yeah, that's going to piss some people off.
What was your impression of the interview?
She appeared truthful, and we were able to corroborate a lot of what she said.
Oh, okay. And is that the measure of the truthfulness for you?
I think when you see interviews and conduct interviews over a course of a career, you start to kind of get a feel if somebody's being truthful or not. And one of the ways we do that is corroborate through other evidence.
Was there any discussion as to how to confirm her veracity by whatever means?
Yeah, so like I said before, we tried to corroborate a lot of what she said through evidence, whether it be digital or documentary. Like, for instance, the windows, we were able to, that was something we had no idea about. And then once the proffer had been completed, we were able to kind of run that down and confirm it.
Her proffer was 2 weeks before her trial. Is that correct, Ms.
Yes.
Perez-Magalhaes? And that was more than a month after Mr. Banfield had been charged, correct?
Correct. He was charged September 16th. I believe the proffer was October 25th, about 6 weeks.
So the proffer was not the determining factor in whether or not to charge Brendan Banfield with the murder of his wife and of Joe Ryan, correct?
Correct.
What was it about Ms. Perez-Magalhaes' proffer that you believed made her to appear truthful?
Well, like, so we were able to corroborate through digital evidence that she left the gym. She basically said that
I'm sorry, can you put your microphone on? What's your objection?
Objection to, it's outside the scope of what I've asked. It's an open-ended question as to the investigation, and it's.
I'll overrule objection. All right, continue.
Please continue.
So she essentially kind of confirmed the sequence of events that I believed occurred. Part of the way we did that was looking at the digital evidence. There were things along the way, for instance, going to the gun range, we were able to see pictures of that. She talked about leaving the gym, that Brendan told her to leave the gym early to go home so that he wouldn't be in the house while the FetLife or Telegram account were active. And we were able to see that on the geolocation of her device and Brendan's device. And then we could see her log or see a log on the Telegram shortly after that device arrived in the area. The windows was something we hadn't had any idea about once she.
When you said the windows, do you mean the replacement of the windows in the Banfield?
Right. So she said that there was a time where Brendan had the windows replaced with windows that were like soundproof, and he asked her to go stand in the driveway, or actually he asked her to stand in the bedroom and scream while he stood in the driveway to see if screams would be able to be heard. She said that she did not want to do that, and so he screamed and she went outside. We were then able to track down a receipt and some emails, I believe, about the windows, and ultimately find the company and speak with the salesman who spoke to Brendan. And there was just a lot of things that over the course of August until February, in the digital evidence that she was able to corroborate for us in that, or that we were able to corroborate her statement after.
All right, thank you.
At the end of Defense Witness 11, Lieutenant Giacchio, the defense elicited multiple times that law enforcement thought they were correct on the catfishing theory, that during the proffer of co-defendant Juliana, they were texting about, we got this right, that they confirmed in those texts that at one point they thought that perhaps Christine had been killed before Joe got to the house, and that the timing of that was clarified. And the defense asked so many questions that allowed the lieutenant to come in and say, this is why we believe Juliana. This is why Juliana is credible. This is how Juliana was corroborated by the digital evidence. This is how Juliana was corroborated by evidence we didn't know. And gave an example saying, we didn't know about the window thing. We didn't know that the windows were replaced. And once Juliana told us that, We then went back, found receipts and emails, and then found the window salesman that testified during the case in chief for the prosecution. We didn't know that before Juliana told us, but Juliana told us and we corroborated it. And when Juliana said that she would leave the gym early and then go get onto the Telegram account, we saw her phone leave the gym. We saw the defendant still at the gym, and then we saw her get back to the house and then log on to the Telegram account. So the things that she was telling us happened that way in the digital evidence. The phones were doing the same things. And then when the prosecution tried to ask in cross-examination, so tell us, why do you think Juliana was credible? Just do that again. The defense objected. The objection was outside the scope, and the court allowed it. And the witness just teed it all up again and said, okay, well, this is the digital forensics that confirmed what Juliana said. And this is the thing that we learned new. This is an example of what we learned new that we were then able to confirm. So we looked at all these things and we were able to confirm that Juliana was being truthful and was credible. And then in redirect, the final question from the defense was a wild choice on, okay, but did everybody in the department agree? And the answer was, after Juliana's proffer, there wasn't anyone left that doesn't believe her. Unbelievable. The evidence as it's come in today is that at one point, law enforcement didn't agree with the prosecution. They thought that the prosecution offering Juliana a manslaughter and time served was dog shit. They thought that their theory that the defendant had set up a catfishing scenario to lure Joseph Ryan to the house was correct. They think that the conclusions of their own digital forensic examiner were incorrect and improper, but that the data was collected properly and accurately. And that at the end of the day, of everyone that was transferred, most of them were promotions, and 2 individuals were laterally transferred. And those 2 individuals were B3 Miller, who was laterally transferred to no longer do digital forensics, and the lead homicide detective, who they said they thought was in over his head. What else we learned is that law enforcement believes Juliana. Law enforcement believes that her testimony is supported by all the digital forensics, that the clean house on the homicide unit meant that most of them got promoted, and that the text messages show that they thought that Juliana was being truthful during her proffer. I'm interested to see where this continues to go.
What was it that happened that raised in your mind the question of Christine having been set up?
At the hotel. So from my understanding, we had an intel detective in the lobby of the hotel that we had everybody in, and she had asked Juliana, can I call you mommy now?
When you say she, who are we
I'm
talking
sorry,
about?
Valerie. Said,
Valerie, Christine's daughter?
Yes. Said, can I call you mommy now? Juliana, again, I don't remember her answer. She said yes.
What was it that raised a red flag for you? The 4-year-old asking the au pair, can I call you mommy now?
And she had asked Juliana, can I call you mommy now?
When you say she, who are we
I'm
talking
sorry,
about?
Valerie. Said, can I-
Valerie, Christine's daughter?
Yes. Said, can I call you mommy now? Juliana, again, I don't remember her answer. She said yes. And then she said, are you going to marry my daddy? And Juliana said, I wish.
Okay.
More things the prosecution never would have gotten into if the defense hadn't stepped directly into it. So at the end of the day, on day 6, the defense chose to recall to the stand Detective Miller. And you're going to say, but Emily, why? I don't know. I don't know why they've recalled Detective Miller. So far, they have shown Detective Miller a number of screen grabs of technical data that he did not create. They were trying to talk to him about, it seemed, a search for Windows, not the operating system, Windows, the ones reinstalled in the house. And they're trying to get into evidence that he didn't collect, he didn't sort, and that he extracted. He then confirmed that he extracted somewhere around 60 devices in this case. But the defense keeps showing him things saying, okay, but what about this? And he's like, I didn't create that. it seems like the defense is trying to lay a foundation, but is not going about it well. And then at one point, the defense was trying to bring in communications that had not been authenticated. The prosecution objected to hearsay, and the defense is like, but they've been extracted through reliable scientific means. And the court's like, yes, they've been extracted, but the words in the conversations are still in fact hearsay. So at the end of day 6, we have learned a lot, but not a ton that was helpful to the defense. I still can't figure out why they called the victim advocate. The head of the victim advocate division, the thing that sticks out about her testimony to me is that she was incredibly restrained when defense was asking if she wanted the defendant to be detained. And at one point she said her concerns about the defendant were the safety of the child. And then she kind of said, I'm not quite sure what you mean. It seemed to me that the victim advocate was being incredibly restrained and mindful, saying, counsel, I'm not sure if you're asking what you think you're asking, but are you asking me if I was afraid for everyone's safety while your client was not arrested? Is that really what you're asking? So she kept saying, I'm not quite sure what you're asking me. I'm not quite sure what you're asking me. I don't have the power to arrest anyone. I don't have the authority to make those decisions. And she really tiptoed around not just saying, yeah, I thought your client murdered his wife, so I did have concerns. And I was surprised that the defense continued to ask so many times. And I think she was incredibly mindful in those responses. But she did talk about something that made her think that this case, she wouldn't use the word catfishing because the defense wants everyone to use the word catfishing. But I think she accurately described it when she said we had questions about whether this was a setup, whether Joseph Ryan was set up in this case. And I think that's an accurate way to describe it. Was this a setup? And she said she started having questions about whether this was a setup the first night after the murder had happened in the morning, the defendant's birthday, when they got the defendant, the au pair, and the 4-year-old a hotel room. And it was heard that the 4-year-old was asking Juliana, can I call you mommy now? Are you going to marry my daddy? And Juliana responded, I wish. And that's really all I remember from the testimony. And I was left with the impression, as the victim advocate was staring at the defense attorney, that she was incredibly restrained. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this episode and don't want to miss updates on your favorite cases, you're going to need the Law Nerd app at lawnerd.app.com. That way you can stay in the loop on the cases that matter most to you, and you never know when you're going to catch feelings for a new case. So make sure you get it for free on iOS and Android. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a Law Nerd.